So hello everybody and welcome to the Women Talking Money podcast. My name is Gretchen from Magenta Financial Planning and today I'm joined by Lisa Marie Mallier. Lisa Marie is an award-winning communications professional and owner of No Fluff Communications, a no-nonsense marketing solution company based in Banbury. No Fluff Communications specialise in dealing with the financial and professional services along with the automotive and commercial property sectors. She states on her website that she's a hater of fluffy stuff, believing marketing should have a pinch of magic, delight customers, and ensure businesses can get seen and heard for the right reasons. In her personal life, she is qualifying as a level 3 personal trainer. So welcome, Lisa Marie, and thank you for joining me today.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
So have you got anything, I mean, talk to me a little bit more about this no fluff. I quite like it. We quite often go, oh, we need a bit of fluff in that letter, but that's something slightly different because you're writing to, your granny about their finances. But yeah, talk to me about the no fluff rule.
Okay, so no fluff really. It came from looking back at my LinkedIn profile actually, when I left the corporate world and was looking for a name for my company when I started working for myself. And I'd put in there in one of the first lines about a no fluff approach to marketing, and it sort of kind of stuck. And really, it's about, I think people overcomplicate marketing is my view. It's like anything, that world moves on. There's always new tools and bells and whistles that you can play with. But actually at the heart of marketing is very simple. It's about delighting customers and helping, get your service and product in front of those customers. And the bit that people often forget about is retention. A lot of the focus goes on sales. So it's back to basics. It's about having a strategy, having a plan, knowing who you're trying to target, and then delighting them in whichever channels that may help you do that.
Excellent. And how long have you been running the business now?
So I left the corporate world. I had a bit of a strange journey into working for myself. I left the corporate world around 2015. And I set up a pop-up comic book shop, which is very different. And I kind of did that as part of a break for 18 months. And then after that time, I was kind of ready to get back to what I know and love and was qualified in, which was marketing. And that was predominantly really a decision made to be able to work flexibly around children. At this point, we had one on the way. And it was very frustrating in a pre-COVID world that to be able to work in quite senior positions, but not be able to have to travel into London or Birmingham would be the closest places to me where there was financial service marketing jobs. People didn't really work from home. So it's kind of gone full circle now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously today we are here to talk about money, which given your experience in financial services marketing, you're probably used to thinking about how we're going to talk about money as an external. But I guess talking about money with you and your thoughts about money might be one of the slightly different. So and the goal of this podcast is just to make sure we have open conversations and can we learn from experiences that people have had and that are willing to share. So I really appreciate you coming on and being part of it with me today.
That's great.
So let's start with the kind of open question I ask so many people around what's your earliest memory of money, but also thinking about that memory of money, is there ways that you can see now that early memory or things you learn have shaped the way you behave with money or your views on money now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my earliest memory of money is actually playing a game with my mum. So me and my sister, when we were quite little, if we had to go along to the social club with them, obviously it wasn't the sort of the most exciting places for children. And my mum was really great at engaging us and making games out of nothing, essentially. And one of the things she used to do was empty the change out of her purse and give us some money and make us think about what we wanted to buy with that money. So she'd give us values for things like a fake shop game. And we had to, decide what we were going to purchase with these pennies. And we also had to count it up so we knew how much money we had. So it was about having fun with money, actually. Like for me, that was quite nice. And obviously later that grew into us having a bit of an allowance when we were a little bit older. And me and my sister both had very different approaches to money. So learning that people have different approaches to money early on was quite interesting.
Yeah. And well, tell me, how did your two approaches differ?
So my sister's definitely more of the sensible saver, and I am much more about actually using a certain not too flippant with money, but much more about using money for enjoyment purposes. So much more around experiences and the value that the money can bring. So not necessarily just on stuff, but what you want your money to do for you, which is kind of why I think then I was attracted to a job in financial services. It was about how money can be used to achieve the things that you want to achieve in life, which goes along with financial planning, I guess, quite nicely.
Yeah. And so do you still feel that the way that you work now, and obviously you've got a family and children, that that your approach is still in that, where you're thinking about what value can this add, and it's it's an interesting one when we talk about experiences and wanting to spend on those, and I normally talk about that a bit later on, but what are your sort of thoughts around that, and if that's still the way that you behave?
I guess I've been on a bit of a journey with money, which most people do. So before I had children and commitments, money was very much around. It was about earning the most money, right? It was just building that career, and one of the things when you're thinking about growing in your career is your title, your status, and the money and the salary that's attributed with that. And then you just do lots of fun things with that money. It changed for me quite fundamentally once we did have a family, because for me, having been the main earner at the time when we had our first child, and going back to work was quite a difficult decision to go back full time when flexible working wasn't so much of a thing. So I become very aware of you were trading your time for money. So it definitely made me feel different about money, and where I would have originally seen a salary of X as a big salary, it made me realize what you are giving up in order to earn that salary. So I think that was my first fundamental change in viewing money, was actually after we had our first baby, and realizing all the other things that you may want to spend your time on that were more important than money.
Yes, I understand that. And I think, yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because we talk so often about finding the balance, about, and I do think it's a lot of pressure now in social media to like live these experiences that all these apparently people are affording to do. But actually, if that means you've got to work doubly hard that year to get on that trip, and that's time away from your family, then that's that could be deemed as, actually, you've got to work out, is that worth that sacrifice or not?
Absolutely. And I think it's the same even when you're looking at the other end of your life, when you're coming towards retirement. It's about realizing you are trading your time for money, and what value do you put on your time. And I think that's a really important lesson for anyone when they're growing up, whether they're starting their career or thinking about running a business and what you might charge for your services, is what value do you put on your time? Because there are so many things that you can't compete on, which everybody is very similar in offering. But the one thing that's usually uniquely different is you, and you as a personality, your experience, your skill set. So it's what value do you put on your time, and what else could you be doing with your time, or what else could you be doing with your money to facilitate what you want to do. So I think it naturally changes as you go through different cycles in your life, and it definitely has for us. And there are times where we've been very frustrated by money, or lack of, because we've got 3 young children. The third one that we weren't expecting to have when we had, which is an absolute blessing, but it's put us back financially where we perhaps expected to be at certain points in our life.
Yeah, really interesting. Do you think that there was a specific person or event that you can reflect on that has influenced your relationship with money?
Yeah, I'd say definitely my parents, and I think that's probably true for the majority of people. That's your sort of earliest memory, is around how you grow up with money, whether that's pocket money or having to have money to go to university or buy a car. Your firsts in life. My parents always worked really, really hard. They didn't have it easy starting out, so they were definitely very motivated. And driven to achieve things for the family, not necessarily for kind of personal status. My mum in particular, her generation was a generation of, I remember her telling me that her parents told her that they weren't going to pay for her to go to college, because what was the point? She was going to have children and have a family. So she wanted to be a doctor, but couldn't afford to put herself through for the courses that were required to do that. So she saved up to put herself through secretarial college. So I always had, I guess, a good relationship with money, in the sense that I knew you had to work really hard for it, and it wasn't just going to be given to you. But equally, I knew that it was important, you know, other things that may be important to you, like your family, didn't come at a cost necessarily for it. So we talk about having a balance, and that's kind of quite hard to quantify sometimes. And I think it's different to everybody depending on where they are. But yeah, so sort of my first memories and people that have shaped that have definitely been my parents. I saw how hard they worked. I saw the hours. I saw the things they maybe didn't have. You know, we didn't go abroad, as you know, when we were youngsters, for a long time. And we did other things, and I've only got great memories of those things. I never felt we missed out on anything. So I think it's very much how you allow it to define yourself and shape yourself, and yeah, just decide what's important.
And how old are your children now?
So we've got three. So the eldest will be 12, going to secondary school in September, which is definitely a scary thought. The middle one is 6, going on 7. And our youngest, Alice, is 3.5 currently. So we've got a good spread of age gaps. That's meant 3 maternities, 3, you know, lots of juggling, not very much money, 3 lots of nursery fees. And, you know, paying for a family of 5 to do anything at the moment in the UK is not cheap.
No. And I was going to say though, so because I'm always, it's really always good to talk to guests about, you know, how we're approaching talking about money with children, how we're trying to shape their, you know, given that you've just said, you know, majority of people are influenced by their parents and their relationship with money is definitely shaped. There's loads of statistics about, you know, of data, around, you know, you having your money habits sort of, or at least thoughts kind of all some things assembled by the time you're 7. It's all like
Yeah.
in your kind of brain already about your real habits to do with money. So especially with your oldest, I guess, like are you seeing times when you're able to kind of, I guess, influence or shape that a little? And how are you managing that, given that we're living in a completely different world than you and I grew up in?
Yeah, I think it is really difficult, and it's definitely one of my biggest bugbears in terms of kind of financial education that's definitely missing at schools and at a younger level. Expecting the parents to perhaps take on that role as well, I think it is quite challenging. For us, it's difficult because we now live in a world where, you know, money doesn't physically exist a lot of the time, and a lot of places don't accept cash. So when you don't physically have something to show and demonstrate to children, it's quite difficult for them to see the value of it. And also we're in a world where, like you said, you can look at social media, and it to the outward world looks like everything's so easy, and it's very driven around, you know, it's very consumer heavy. We definitely have children that, you know, they want to fit in, they want to have what their friends have, and that's not always possible. And we don't apologize for that, but we do take the time to explain, and we'll do have agreements with them that if there's something that they want that we don't think they should just have, they have to earn it, and they earn that through chores or saving money that they get given at Christmas by family members. And then we give them the freedom to choose what they spend that money on. So I think that's nice that they get, you know, a decision, but it doesn't just grow on trees. But it's hard as a parent. You kind of, you do want to spoil your children, and equally you want them to have it easier than you had it. But I think there's that balance again of how can you truly value something if you don't understand where it comes from and how hard it is to earn. So we have that conversation with our eldest. He's quite savvy when it comes to that. He's definitely more on the saver side of things. He there's certain things he wants that he's prepared to, you know, save and have, whereas, you know, some of the younger ones, I guess, which is typical, they kind of don't really have that concept yet.
You don't have that impulse control.
No. Not at all.
Just that plastic thing that I really want, you
Well,
know.
you don't even see that now, do you? Tap
No.
your phone. I mean, like, so they just want a phone. They don't even know what they want the phone for sometimes. But
It's so completely different, isn't it? It's mad. Okay, so going back to you a bit then, how would you describe your current relationship with money if I asked you to do that in one?
complicated.
I love that. Oh, complicated. I love your honesty around it.
I think I'm at that stage of life. Like, one of the reasons I took the job in financial services at the time, it was a public relations job. I went for 2 jobs. There was 2 jobs. They were both in the same building, weirdly enough. One was for
Quite often happens in financial services. We're all like, oh.
And that's the job I wanted, I'm not going to lie. And then the other job was in financial services for a stockbroker. And I'd gone for the job for the stationery company. And sadly, just as the period of offering the job, they went through a recruitment freeze. So they were like, we really want you, but we can't actually officially offer you the job for another couple of weeks. So the recruitment agency had said, well, we've got another job and it's in the same building. Why don't you go for nothing else more than like interview experience? So I went, and definitely the person who interviewed me sold the job to me. He was brilliant. He talked about money and finance so passionately. It would have been hard to walk out there and not have been impressed. And I had this thought that maybe it was time to get a grown-up job, and if I got a job in money, I would actually understand it. So that's how I first got into financial services. And I said complicated because I think there's the current situation, our family situation and work situation versus what we would like to be able to do. So I think for me, it's more about putting things in place that I can now in a realistic way to get to where we want to be later in life. And yeah, just to remind myself that it's normal to not have tons of money when you've got 3 children and running your own business.
Yeah, and just to be like maybe a bit kinder to yourself about that, isn't it? It is normal. I think also, I was just having a really interesting conversation with someone before recording this with you about how that outward facing, again, social media, Instagram look of even people in business, right? Even people who like putting themselves out there, they're like apparently got it all sorted, making absolutely loads of money, can make you, all of these coaches make you loads of money as well. And the reality is that, like, and I don't know if you like strip it all down, whether that's actually what's happening. So we've just got to be kinder to ourselves, that it's very easy to put across a persona on everything
Absolutely.
of massive success.
Absolutely. And I think it is definitely hard. And this is one of the things we do try and teach the children is to not believe everything you see. And one of the reasons I'm still such a big fan of going networking, or what I call it is just speaking to real people, is that when you start having those conversations and then opening up with each other, you realize that you're all on very similar journeys, or you've all experienced very similar things, might be at different stages of your business. And the more prepared you are to be open and honest about those things, the more you realize actually we're all just in the same, we're all doing the same, going through the same things. So yeah, I think it's being open and honest and willing to learn.
Yeah. And as I said, well, you said, and I agree, raising 3 children, getting all of those things through, it's a hard old slog when you're running your own business as well. I don't do it, but my sister does, and it's pretty tough.
Yeah, it's not, it's aspirational to run your own business. But I think if people ask to sum up or what the benefits is, or from my experience of it is, it's, hopefully at some point in the future, it solves a lot of your your goals, but not to underestimate the hard work and literally your soul that goes into it. And sometimes it's about actually saying no to business as well, no to money, because it's not the right time, or you're not prepared to work 70 or 90-hour weeks at the expense of something else.
Again, that exchange of your value of your time. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about balance earlier, but talk to me a little bit, even though I know that we've said the relationship with money is complicated. So I appreciate that. But between, you've got this kind of, we've got to, manage through our family life. We've got to manage, money that we've got, and also thinking about the future.
Mm-hmm.
And also enjoying experiences. And we're under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of things we've got to do then, haven't we? So how are you balancing that? How are you sort of finding that goes?
So we have like a family budget. I get a like bills budget, whatever you want to call it, your normal boring budget of all the stuff you've got to pay for. So we have a budget, and my husband's definitely better at being strict on that. One of the things we did which was really good actually, is we had that budget and we have that in a completely separate bank account. So we put the amount of money in that's required for all of those, like your mortgage and everything else that goes out every month that you've got to pay before you've got, money to do fun stuff. And then what's left, we give ourselves a budget each, which we have in a personal bank account, so I can spend it on what I want to, he can spend it what he wants to. And then we have like a top-up card, which is for more like the food and the petrol, your sort of more day-to-day expenses as you go along. So we've definitely done it by sort of budgeting pots, which makes that easier. And we both sort of contribute to our pension. That was kind of a non-negotiable, even sort of when I was on maternity. And that was definitely a lesson learned from working in financial services, and some of the scary statistics around women in particular being able to put into that pot. And it's something that, I'll quite honestly, we had this conversation the other day. So how much do you put into your pension? Oh, I'm only putting this in. Well, I'm only putting this in. Well, we need to up mine then, and because it's easy to think everything's fine when it's all, working well. But having worked in financial services, I've seen it when it doesn't work so well, and when people, unfortunately, in relationships break down and women are left with the children, and there's no real sort of kind of legal definition of who gets what, and no preparation for the future. Because let's be honest, that if that was to happen, we've got 3 children, probably means one of us is going to be the main carer for those children over a significant amount of time, which impacts that person's ability to earn a wage. So it's having conversations like that and not being afraid to have conversations around money, and that you're not trying to upset anyone. It's not about one person having more than the other, but you're both ultimately trying to achieve the same things in life, but being realistic. One of you's going to take a back seat at some point in your job, whether that's through maternity or changing roles. So we've always been pretty good as a couple, I think, at being honest about what our expectations are, money and life, and then challenging each other if one of us doesn't agree. But he definitely holds the purse strings. He's definitely better at that. I'm more of a speculate to accumulate kind of girl.
I think so. This is probably the first time, I think, in all of my conversations that the pension and maternity leave has come up, even though it is really, really important. But obviously, what I'm trying to do here is facilitate conversations that how people are managing it. But I find it really interesting around, we all know if you're working in finance, we all know the really scary statistics. The pension gap, something like almost 50% now, the gender pension gap. So we're just not doing as well when it comes to managing to save in our pensions. And it's a multitude of things. Could be because for some periods of time we don't earn as much, or for some periods of time we are on maternity leave. Or I also think what's also coming into the mix is, for example, setting up self-employed like you have, running your own business. And a lot of women are doing this because we need it for the flexibility of our family and our children. And now, because since the pandemic, it's a lot more, it's a better solution almost. But then the pension's not on that list.
Yeah, no, it's been a non-negotiable. And even though, there's definitely been times where I could have been better with money, or, I feel guilty because I'm not investing in a period of time. I think because working in financial services so early, and luckily the employer at the time was great at incentivizing, even if we did nothing, we just opted into the pension. They paid 8% of our salary, even if we contributed nothing. So that was like, you would be surprised. It was probably about 40% of staff still didn't do that, and when asked why, it was because they didn't expect to be at the firm for very long. It's like they're literally giving you money for nothing.
Free money.
Opt in. Like, it's free money. It's 8% of your salary. Like, it's just free money. I was like, you want to give me free money? Absolutely, I'm going to take it. But then I think it's like anything, isn't it? It's a habit. So if you are used to putting X amount of money aside per month without even touching it first, it just happens. It goes into an account. I actually found really unsettled when I went on maternity that wasn't happening at the same level, because obviously my salary was reduced. So because it was a habit, that made me feel uncomfortable to not continue with it. So even if I don't contribute as much as I would like to through maternity and having set up my own business, it's like having an accountant. It was a non-negotiable for me. I'm not the best with money because I am more creatively minded. So therefore, I'm going to invest in somebody who is better with money than me to tell me what I need to do to make sure that I don't fall foul of lots of typical things that business owners might do. And that's not to say that we can't do things better. I absolutely can. But yeah, there were some non-negotiables in there, and the pension was one. I'd like to put more into it, but it's a realistic level for where we're at right now.
And I think the main thing actually is that you're still doing it, because a lot of people would have gone, oh, well, I won't do it for 2 years because it's not as much, and then I'll catch up.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen. The compounding impact of doing it monthly from the first day you start a job to when you finish is going to be massive.
And I just think we live in such a world now where we've got these great tools and AI and gamification. What an opportunity it is to play around and have fun with that in a visual way. So we talked earlier about not having money, physical money, to kind of represent and play those games that I may have done as a child, but to be able to, put in your age and how much money you might invest, and then I think we just need to start having fun with money and not making it such a taboo, boring, subject, and actually think about what the financial planners do really well is, what do you want your money to do for you? I wasn't taught that. I was taught money and having a budget, but I
Yes.
was never taught about what I wanted money to do for me. It was very much, how much money am I going to put into things? So when you, as I've kind of get a bit older and you learn about residual income or investing, it's like none of that stuff, you don't get taught that. But actually, at an age when your brains are like sponges as kids, it's just such a shame we don't capture that excitement about the potential of money so early on.
I think so. It relates really well to the person I interviewed in the episode that will be before this. Is like, if you're lucky enough to have been brought up in a situation where you were taught these things pretty well, or at least you understand budgeting, or even if you weren't taught those things, you've now learned those things. It's like, but what's the thing beyond that? Like, so I want to know what I'm doing, but I also want to know like why I'm doing it and what I'm doing it for. So like building that, like what is the ultimate goal, and thinking about how you're going to get to those points, because there's loads of stuff about budgeting and being savvy and doing this and doing that, but actually we all get a bit bored about just saving it all, and we don't know what, like, we don't know if it's enough. Like, amount of people who say to me, how much should I save? But you don't know that unless you've got a plan. So that's like quite a difficult one to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think it's just a case of, we all know that building habits is the kind of the best way. Making things like a really easy, don't even think about it, just a habit is the best way to encourage people to do something more of it. And we can raise awareness of gaps in pension gaps and salary gaps and all sorts of things. But what we're not talking about is what to actually do about that. Talking to a 7-year-old child about retiring with a pension pot of X amount means absolutely nothing. So I think we need to go back to basics of talking about, what does your life look like? What do you want to be able to do? How many hours a week do you want to work? What sort of job you're going to do? If you really want that to kind of resonate with people who are starting out a lot younger, and actually build some kind of financial education that means something before we're 65, 70 and retiring on a pension pot. I think another really important thing for me that's kind of shaped my view on money more recently is losing my mum. They were, again, very much that generation is, we will work really hard until we're 65, and then we're going to retire and do all the things we wanted to do. Well, do you know what? You might not get to 65, and you've worked really hard all of your life for these things. So I just think it does go back to that balance again of, we don't, unfortunately, again, in this country, the chances are of most people in a normal, stable job retiring before 70 are few and far between. So actually, it's more important than ever we talk about money.
Yeah. And I think retirement is changing. So yes, state pension age, which most people still associate the time when they're going to retire. Actually, maybe our plan needs to be that, and our plans and our thoughts and our conversations need to be, well, maybe there's not a hard stop, but how am I going to make the most of those years when I have enough money and I can still do stuff? Because
Absolutely.
I know that, we're talking the generational difference between like when you're 40, when you're 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, and what you're able to do in those is so completely different, health wise, money wise, everything,
Absolutely.
and your objectives will change because your lives will change. But I guess it's sort of at least having that conversation and going, I do want to be that person who, is 70 on a cruise 4 times a year, or I'm not. I'm more than likely just going to be once pottering my garden because I really enjoy time with my family, and I'm still going to want to do that when I'm 70. You've got different, that's why the plan's so important rather than just the saving.
Well, and I think the plan can change as well. That was something that wasn't really something I was aware of until I worked with in financial services and talked to some of these advisors and planners of, like, that is the plan for right now, and we can check in on that plan and check the plan's still the same. You don't just do this plan and file it in a drawer. It's very similar to a marketing strategy or a business strategy. It's not a 15-page document that we're going to put in a drawer and never look at again. That's not the way it should be. So I think it's, yeah, like I said, it goes back to having that, making it more relatable and having a bit more fun about it, and not being afraid to talk about it, and not just make it this thing we do once in a blue moon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a living, breathing, evolving plan that you've got to have. And it's okay if it gets knocked off of kilter now and again, as long as you know what you've got to do and think about it
Absolutely.
and don't bury your head, then those things are all good. Yeah. So Lisa, just before I've got a couple more minutes, we'll do a recording. So what does financial freedom mean to you, and how do you think that you're working towards it?
And financial freedom to me means having more time to do what I enjoy. And for me at the moment, that means spending every Friday with my daughter. Obviously all my children, but they're at school 5 days a week. She's still of an age where she doesn't need to be there 5 days a week. So I don't work on a Friday, and I could easily fill that time on a Friday. And it's quite difficult to hold myself accountable to not working on a Friday. I'm not going to lie sometimes, but they grow up so quick. And for me, that means having time with them. It also means being able to have that time in the school holidays if needs be. And it also means having some residual income so that I'm earning money when I'm not working as such. So for me, it's about building a more rounded financial plan of money and not expecting it to just come from one income stream.
Thank you for that. And I'm interested to know if you could share one bit of advice now with your younger self, what that might be.
Money doesn't make you happy, but it can facilitate some of the things that do.
And do you think there were things when you were younger that you did that's why you've come up with that?
Yeah, I remember a big thing for me was that changing point in the career of leaving corporate. The stability of a job and a salary coming in, but the pressure of how difficult family life had got to contain. I was off. I had to take a career break. I broke really under. It's not a surprise, working long hours, having a newborn child, and not much support. And during that time, I had to take some time off due to stress, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And sometimes you do have to hit your rock bottom to really appreciate what matters. And we had very honest conversations about money during that time as the main earner, and it just wasn't important to my other half. So just take that pressure away. Like, we don't need all that money. We can live on a lot less if needs be. And I want you to do what makes you happy. And I don't think I'd ever thought about doing what made me happy. I just did what I was good at and qualified to do, then went for a job where I could earn the most money doing it.
Well, and I mean, reflecting on that, it's thank goodness you were able to have that conversation and
Yeah.
have that and be able to have that kind of relationship. We could have that conversation because, that is a big challenge, I think, in society now. So often we see it in reverse, where you've got men with real mental health problems and challenges because of the pressure of money and trying to keep up. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't work when, you are whoever's the main earner. That is big stress.
I think you can't have it all of the time. Like, you can have it all, but not all at the same time. And we don't teach people that either. We teach people that they can have it all, and that's not true. You can, but not all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. Okay, so well, as we wrap up, do you want to leave us with one final thought about maybe something you would like every woman to know or think differently about money from your experience?
I definitely have a plan, and that doesn't have to be a boring, scary thing. And if you can't do it on your own, talk to somebody who's qualified to help. And I guess it's sort of not strictly money, but related to money. For me, the biggest thing as a business owner that I've kind of learned that has helped on the money front as well is spend that time investing in your network. Because it is an old adage, true and cheesy, but your network is your net worth. So find those advocates for you, find those people that can support you in those various journeys, or and champion you too and help you get through. But invest in your network as well. It's not all about physical money.
Well, listen, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing with me today. Is there, just finally, I guess, to ask, are there key spaces like on social that you're up on that people can find you on and find more about your work that you're doing?
Yeah, definitely the best one for me is LinkedIn. It's hard to be everywhere all of the time and do it well. So for me, LinkedIn is definitely the place to go. Happy if anyone wants to shoot me a message and connect, but that's definitely the best channel for me.
Fab. Well, listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Me too.